Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to everyone to this session on promoting migrant entrepreneurships, in particular for refugees. This is part of the World Investment Forum, which is run by UNCTAD this week. And we look forward to an interesting discussion with all of you and with the wonderful panel and with the wonderful speakers that we have lined up here for the session today. This session is part of a partnership, of a work stream between UNHCR, UNCTAD, and IOM, and it is part of the work around promoting policy guidelines for migrant and refugee entrepreneurs. And the objective of the session today is really to inspire policies, new policy ideas, to exchange what is working, to hear from the field as well, and to stress also the importance of partnerships, especially in this realm of refugee and migrant entrepreneurship, and to identify some of the elements that are going to be important for the future. So the way we're going to run it, we're going to start with a few opening remarks by the deputy DGs, and then we will hear directly from a migrant entrepreneur from Kenya, and we will end with a panel. Or we spend most of the time hearing from a panel on policy ideas and their policy solutions that they've implemented. And my name is Margarita Jeniek. I'm a managing partner with Horizon Group. And in addition to working on this professionally, I also happen to be a migrant and an entrepreneur. So there's a double dividend for me for participating in this session today. I'll be watching your in particular time and making sure that we end on time at 2 p.m. Geneva time later today. As I said, we'll kick off with the opening remarks from Ms. Isabelle Durand, who is the Deputy Secretary General of UNCTAD. Isabelle, over to you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. And ladies and gentlemen, I would start to say that our world would not look the same without the ingenuity, courage, and perseverance of entrepreneurs. Without any doubt, entrepreneurship makes an important contribution to sustainable development. This is also explicitly recognized in the United Nations General Assembly resolution on entrepreneurship for sustainable development, adopted in 2020. With this resolution, member states are encouraged to design, implement, monitor, and evaluate entrepreneurship policies and ensure that vulnerable groups are not left behind, so that they can access sustainable livelihoods through entrepreneurship. Vulnerable groups include migrants and refugees. But we should not forget that beyond vulnerability, the skills and the talent of the migrants and refugees can be an immense source for development. The objective is to engage migrant and refugee entrepreneurs in productive activities in a sustainable way, improving the quality of their lives as well as local communities. More than 20 countries have developed action plans in line with the policy guide. Migrants and refugees face several barriers to participate effectively in economic activity, ranging from their legal status, with regulation preventing them from working and accessing basic services, to lack of access to startup finance and formal bank accounts, as well as, of course, language and cultural barriers and impoverishment. While migrants are not entrepreneurs by nature, the experience of their journeys, often long, complicated, and sometimes dangerous, the risk that they took and the difficulty they faced make them more resilient and reinforce their will to succeed in their new life. And UNCTAD has been promoting migrant and refugee entrepreneurship in partnership with IOM and UNHCR since 2017, and that's of course our partners today. Our joint policy guide on entrepreneurship for migrants and refugees that I just mentioned has become a landmark framework offering a holistic and comprehensive approach to policy formulation and implementation in the areas of regulatory framework and access to education, finance, technology, networks, and markets. We know also that the humanitarian development nexus is sensitive and requires innovative partnerships. UNCTAD therefore works closely with other UN entities and member states to build capacity, raise awareness, and improve policies on the role of entrepreneurship for social and economic integration of migrants and refugees in the host countries. in partnership with IOM and UNHCR and UNCTAD, has been stimulating discussions among policymakers and the wider stakeholders community on how entrepreneurship promotion measures might support the long-term social and economic inclusion of refugees and migrants and enhance their positive economic and development impact on host country. And even last year, or 1.5 years ago, I was in Marrakesh in the summit about these issues for migration. I presented this initiative. Through a technical assistance project, we have brought together local and national authorities, civil society, private sector, and academia in Ecuador, Jordan, and Uganda. This project has given UNCTAD a first-hand experience in understanding the challenges faced by migrant and refugee entrepreneurs in specific country context. The lack of coordination in the institutional framework and presence of legal barriers aggravates their situation. There was substantial information gap between stakeholders in the ecosystem and migrant and refugees entrepreneurs. Even when regulations exist, like it is the case in Uganda, for migrant and refugee entrepreneurs to register their business or access various forms of capital, including tradings, alternative finance, land and technology, implementation often lacks due to information gap. While many stakeholders are increasingly paying attention to migrants and refugees, particularly in skills training programs, lack of coordination and monitoring and evaluation is leading to inefficiencies in potential impact. The COVID-19 pandemic has challenged project implementation on the ground, and yet it has also forced us to think differently and find solutions adapted to the new context. We therefore partnered with UNITAR to develop an e-learning course on entrepreneurship for migrants and refugees. The course strengthens the competencies required by policymakers and practitioners for overcoming some of the challenges on economic and social inclusion for migrants and refugees, and raises the understanding of the benefits of entrepreneurship. The 6 weeks e-learning course follows closely the joint policy guide. Launched in March 2020 in English, the course is now also available in Arabic, French, and Spanish. So far, over 1,000 participants from 90 countries, including policymakers and practitioners, have been certified. Ladies and gentlemen, entrepreneurship offers people a pathway to act upon opportunities in the marketplace, formalize ideas into business, and create value. Entrepreneurship is the driver of productivity and economic growth. The Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration, as well as the Global Compact for Refugees, are important achievements of the international community. The work delivered through UNCTAD, IOM, UNHCR partnership can make an important contribution to this Global Compact. I thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Durand, for setting the stage and highlighting how important entrepreneurship is in this context, and for highlighting some of UNCTAD's important work and great work in this area. I'll hand over to Mr. Raouf Mazou, who is Assistant High Commissioner for Operations at UNHCR, for his opening remarks. Mr. Raouf Mazou, please.
Thank you very much, Margaret. And first, I would like to say how pleased we are at UNHCR to take part in the World Investment Forum and speak about the work we're doing with UNCTAD and IOM on refugee and migrant entrepreneurship. Refugees and migrants are usually not associated to the idea or the concept of entrepreneurship, and yet, as Isabel said earlier, it is in this group that you find the most innovative, resilient, and risk-aware individuals. And if you allow me to focus on refugees, there are presently about 26.4 million refugees who've been forced to flee their home. And this number is unfortunately growing. 10 years ago, at the start of the Syrian crisis, there were about 15.2 refugees around the world. What we're observing all around the world is that when they reach a place of safety, refugees receive protection and assistance from their host, but very quickly want to be able to fend for themselves, to resume, to the extent possible, the life they have lost, using their skills, using their talent, and using their knowledge. But finding employment would be one option, but often, as we all know, employment, and specifically formal employment, goes first to nationals. And even if it was not the case, legislation, as was said earlier, do not always allow refugee employment. Entrepreneurship, whatever small the business is often, therefore, the way forward. And depending on the circumstances, there can be many obstacles on the road to entrepreneurship. We mentioned it before: finance, knowledge of the context or lack thereof, legislation, bureaucracy. And the work that we've done with UNCTAD and IOM since 2017 has allowed us to better understand context in order to identify obstacles, identify opportunities also, and offer solutions. So we have, as was said earlier, collectively published a policy guide on entrepreneurship, which provides a framework for countries to adapt enabling policies. Using this guide, context-specific plans have been developed in 20 countries by a group comprising of the private sector, government, UN agencies, NGOs, refugees. And this group looked at networks, technology, training, new finance that should be identified, and markets. As was said earlier, developing new partnership is absolutely essential to the success of this initiative. And to see policymakers, development, and the private sector actors all come together is, I think, the recipe for success, for us to be able to create an enabling context for refugees and migrant entrepreneurs. We will hear about the role of impact investors in these efforts. Many may ask why it makes sense for a country or for an economy to include and empower refugees and migrants. And I think Innocent Abyaimana, a refugee entrepreneur in Kakuma, Kenya, will provide the answer. He employs 40 people in a soap-making enterprise, and he creates value, he creates wealth. In Turkey, Syrians have started more than 9,000 companies, accounting for 560 million USD of capital. And in the long run, entrepreneurship is a driver of productivity and economic growth, as Isabel said earlier. And if the right support, the right framework are in place, refugees and migrants can be an accelerator of such growth. And this is the premise on which is founded the Global Compact on Refugees, which was adopted by the General Assembly in December 2018. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I think one of the striking numbers that I have heard is that on average, a refugee status, I think, or one of the estimates suggests that it's about 18 years. So it's a very, very long situation that we're talking about here. It's not just 2 to 3 years during a short conflict. So that's why it's also very important that, of course, refugees are integrated economically and socially into the host countries' economies. Thank you for that. We'll move on to IOM, the third partner in this endeavor, and I'll hand the floor to Ms. Ugoshi Daniels, who is the Deputy Director General for Operations at IOM.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, colleagues and participants. It's an honor for me to participate in this event today. And this is 3 years after a similar side event we jointly convened in October 2018. A lot has happened since then, and today this event allows us to take stock of where we are as well as look forward. So for me, in my brief remarks, there are 3 things I'd like to zoom into. First is how IOM is reviewing the intersection between entrepreneurship and migration and materializing that in practice, why it's important for us to distinguish support on policies targeting entrepreneurs amongst migrants and refugee communities. Second, to share a concrete example of how IOM is working in the area of entrepreneurship for migrants. And third, to provide a few suggestions on how the work in the policy area could be further streamlined and enhanced moving forward as the world is working to recover from COVID-19. So with regard to my first point, migrant entrepreneurs and the diaspora make important contributions to their countries and communities of origin, either by transferring knowledge or financial resources while remaining in countries of destination or upon returning home. While migrant businesses tend to be micro or small enterprises, it's really interesting to note that a large share of the Fortune 500 companies, 44% to be exact, were founded or co-founded by an immigrant or the child of an immigrant. In an increasingly interconnected world, it's migrants and refugees who become enablers and actors of innovation, knowledge diffusion, transnational connectivity, and broadening of economic prosperity and social well-being for all. I happened to be in a discussion, the International Dialogue on Migration last week, and the representative from the government of Portugal was actually speaking about how migrants have a net contribution to their social security system of over 900 million euro. So that's just one example of the contributions migrants are making. Now on my second point, which is to update on IOM's work on migrant entrepreneurship, this spans several migration policy domains. So last year, IOM assisted several thousand enterprises through its programming on integration, counter-trafficking, assisted voluntary return and reintegration, community development and stabilization, as well as diaspora engagement. And we applied the entrepreneurship development, the enterprise development and entrepreneurship model, which is very much in line with UNCTAD's policy approach to entrepreneurship. And through this, we've supported 35,000 individual entrepreneurs and businesses with training, financial inclusion and startup funding, as well as broader capacity and networking. IOM's Enterprise Development Fund was created to support large-scale rapid recovery from conflict with ISIS in Iraq. And by the end of this year, we will have invested over $18 million in over 1,100 small and medium enterprises, which has allowed these businesses to create almost 6,000 jobs for displaced population groups and host communities. Dear colleagues, partners, participants at this forum, as I've already said, it's been 3 years since we launched the Joint Policy Guide on Entrepreneurship for Migrants and Refugees during the World Investment Forum in Geneva in 2018. What's clear is that UN agencies and partners will need to continue strengthening collaboration and joint approaches when supporting entrepreneurs amongst migrants and displaced population groups. The COVID-19 recovery and the UN Decade of Acceleration within the Agenda 2030 require our joint engagement with policymakers and other partners to ensure common approaches. Now, this brings me to my third and final point on what we could do together to help ensure even larger impact and effectiveness of our work. We need to continue to advocate for a whole of UN and society approach to entrepreneurship amongst migrants and refugees. We need to broaden the policy guidance and practical tools for governments and partners working with migrant and refugee entrepreneurs on the ground, as well as for development cooperation partners, to ensure that they too embrace the importance of supporting initiatives on entrepreneurship and private sector development in the context of migration and displacement. Finally, and probably most important of all, work needs to happen on the ground, supporting families, businesses, and societies in recovering from the shocks of the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm really thrilled to see migration and human mobility occupying an important place at the agenda of the World Investment Forum. While supporting the most vulnerable, we also need to recognize that entrepreneurs amongst migrants and displaced population groups have been contributing to the prosperity and resilience of our societies and economies, diffusing their knowledge, resources, and collaborative spirit across borders and markets. IOM will continue to work with partners in the UN and beyond to support the work on empowerment and inclusion of entrepreneurs amongst migrants and refugees. Together, we can make a real difference and move towards real impact on the ground. And today's event is making a concrete contribution. And I wish all of you inspiring discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jens. I hope we will live up to the expectations that you set out for the event. Just a note before we continue with a particular case, with a practical case from the field, a few words to the audience. As an audience, you have the possibility to ask questions and to share comments about what has been just said and all the content of the session. So please go ahead and share your questions and ask your questions so that we have a lively debate and that you feel involved. You can be involved in the debate afterwards once we start also the panel discussion. We will take the questions and answer the questions after the panelists have made their interventions. So bear with us until more towards the end of the session, but there will be an opportunity and we'll get back to it. On that note, it's a pleasure to introduce Mr. Innocent. I hope I don't pronounce the name correctly. Havarimana from currently in Kenya for an inspiring story about migrant entrepreneurship, because you are a migrant entrepreneur yourself and you have built a company that employs, as we heard, I think 40 people, that is manufacturing soap. So please tell us more about your experience, and also, of course, don't spare us the challenges that you are facing while going about your venture. And you're on mute, so please unmute so that we can hear you.
Okay, dear panelists, speakers, guests, and audience, hi everyone. I am Innocent Havarimana, refugee entrepreneur, founder and the CEO at the Grab Enterprises, which I found in 2015 here at the Kakuma refugee camp. I have been living in this camp since 2013. I did chemistry back in my home country at the Burundi University, and graduated in business administration last July from South New Hampshire University. Currently, I am looking for a scholarship to continue my study in a master's degree in the same field, I mean in the business, so that I can be better equipped in this sector. This will assist me to empower my fellow refugee and the host community, especially where I will be living, in being self-employed through business, support creating jobs for themselves and others. Number two, it is like to get better education for my future and my former employment perspective. Number three, it is to promote good hygiene practices and the conditions within the community and household for better hygiene practice and close to each other in the camp and from different backgrounds. Better hygiene in the community lead to reduce illness. People will contribute to and lead to a good life. They will be more empowered to rebuild the livelihood where they settled, repatriated, and integrated. Why should the private sector invest in a refugee camp, especially in Kakuma refugee camp where I am? Because with my experience as an entrepreneur, refugees can do business for multiple purposes. As I mentioned before, like a Karbaye integrated socio-economic development plan, which brings all agencies together to support the refugee and host community in our plan, as it comprises the comprehensive refugee response framework objective, a whole society approach, government-led, complementarity, and partnership. Evidence economy offsets over 500,000 residents live here. There is power in number for untapped market in renewable energy, internet connectivity, digital economy, and occupation. A vibrant informal economy is ready to become formal as entrepreneur, comply, and limit for the government lives. Potential renewable energy opportunity. When addressed is sustainable, there is wind and sunlight that can generate clean energy for commercial, domestic, and agricultural production, and the manufacturing, of course, because it is in my field. So lead to competitive and sustainable production. With business, refugees will be able to overcome their stress during flight to this country. They will be able to have the dignity of choice, get money and buy whatever they want. This change their lifestyle and overcome poverty. They will be able to do whatever they want, to go wherever they want, and also to plan the future of their kid or their community. Provide better education opportunity. As I mentioned that I wanted to do my master's degree in business, this can support themselves and not always look for help from UNHCR or other agencies. A lack of better opportunity can lead to despair and violence. So it means that for the education, it can assist and contribute so much in a livelihood. Refugee and Kenyan can live in peaceful coexistence. This is complementing each other, skills, product, and the services for the benefit of all. GRAP is meaningful impact since its founding. Both refugee and the host community continue to experience meaningful impact. For instance, up to now, GRAP Enterprises has employed 42 people, where 14 are from host community and 28 are from Kakuma refugee camp and the Karbaye settlement camp. I think you from there you can understand that I did my best. I have also trained over 100 people in soap making and also mentored them through GIZ, through Swiss Contact, through DRC, through Handicap International, which is a humanity and inclusion now, through WHH from Kakuma, Karbaye, Letea, Songot, Lopur, Lokichogio, Gort, and Lodwa. All those are the village or city from Turkana West County, where they are enjoying the fruit of GRAP enterprises and are assisting their fellow. Because always once I train them, I tell I'm giving you these skills so that you empower yourself, you empower your family, and also empower your community. Currently, intervention includes mentoring to 40 businesses. Those are from both host community and the refugees. Because I know I will be not living here all the rest of my life. That is why I wanted to mentor at least some people, a good number, so that whenever I will go, people will still enjoy my gift from God. Gaps in the private sector investment deployment in Kakuma and the Karbaye will help address some challenges which are affecting our entrepreneurship success include the need for training related to the business field and the financial activity. Many refugees are not doing the business on what they are doing, but it is because of what they are seeing others are doing. And this is caused to fail to their business. Again, many refugees did not go at school. So this is because of the problem in financial and the record. So I would like if there is a possibility to contribute so much.
I can hear you.
it was electricity. So I was I was saying about the need of trainings related to business. So let's like if you are in manufacturing in like a soap, you have to be trained in a soap. If you are like in manufacturing in the containers like a plastic, let's say you have trained in those fields. Another challenge is capital. Many people are willing to start business. They have a great idea that can make them develop themselves and their community, but they cannot access to the startup kit. Even if they try their best, because of those starters which are refugee and the vulnerability, they cannot access. We need also something to act here. Number 3, it is access to affordable loan. Both refugee and the host community is doing well. However, when it comes to access to loan, especially at the bank, and this is the experience I was living in, and the other financial services provider, it is not easy because of the procedure, the time it takes, and the lack of access to the required document. Challenges related to the need of movement pass. This is the process which takes and limit itinerary. Sometimes you can look for a movement pass where you have to go to LAS, you book for an appointment, you go there, you will just make a line, you have to spend like 1 hour. And if they give you that movement pass, you have to go on where it is indicated. If you go like to Nairobi, it is directed to Nairobi, not to go to Rakchogio or to Lopur, for example. This is something we also wanted to address. Another issue, it is about water and electricity shortage, constitutes another big challenge. In Turkana West, we have a lack of water and electricity. So we are looking your assistance from UNHCR, the government of Kenya, and the investors. Entrepreneurs and non-entrepreneurs in Kakuma would benefit from having cooperative public market and more collaboration between refugee and the host community entrepreneurs. Synergy from different sector approaches and the stockholder would catalyze cooperative, social, and the mixed market, and the savings and the credit, which is SAPO, which will assist in the development of refugee and the host community, and help us live peacefully together and develop each other. Finally, we would also benefit from more exchange of business idea through exhibition and event that showcase what the different entrepreneurs are doing, like 1 week exhibition of good and the success, and exchange visit to each other. Because what I know, it is not what other people are know. So I would like to have at least exchange. I see what others are doing so that I learn from them and the others learn from me, different exchange. With these few remarks, I appreciate greatly the effort of the government of Kenya, the UNHCR, the funders and the donors allow us to do business here in Kakuma to facilitate some trainings and to raise awareness about what we are doing in the respective community. You are making us to understand that we are able to contribute to the development of community and helping us to do so. Thanks very much, and we are still waiting for your support to us so that we change our community. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Havarimana. This is a great summary of many of the challenges that entrepreneurship are facing, and of course, being placed in the refugee camps, you have a particular experience of this, but you have in a very lively way also highlighted all the positive effects that refugee entrepreneurship can have on the local communities and on the other, on other refugees as well. We have before we move on to the panel for their contributions, we have one question for Mr. Mazou from Rosario Galvan, and the question is, would you be available to take this question, Mr. Mazou, please?
Yes, no, of course, absolutely.
Of course. So the question is, how does the policy guide and more generally national plans address the need for entrepreneurial support of host populations to avoid pushback against migrants and refugees and to promote social cohesion? So it's a very important question about, what do the host countries do essentially? How do the national plans and the policy guides address the issues in host countries to avoid pushback and to promote social cohesion?
No, it's an excellent question, and in reality, what we're talking about is indeed social cohesion. And if you look at the Global Compact on Refugees, which was adopted by the General Assembly in December 2018, it talks of empowering refugees, but it also talks about host community, which often are the ones receiving people at the beginning and providing the initial support. Innocent spoke about what is being done by UNHCR and other partners in Turkana, in the Turkana region of Kenya, in Kakuma in particular. And that's really about supporting all communities together, realizing that if all population, whether it is refugees or whether it is host population, work together, that we can actually see an improvement in the economic situation of the entire community. And that not only has been proved, but it has been measured. So any plan, anything that we're talking about now is about host population and refugees or migrants. Cohesion is the key word and is the key objective.
Thank you for that. I think it's of course a very important question, and thank you for the response to this and for letting us know how you address those issues. With this, we will move on to our panel, to our renowned panel of experts. We'll talk about more, the policy side of things and the policy endeavors and the finance, how to overcome also some of the finance gaps that Innocent have been mentioning, and how to support also social policies at the host country level. And to this question, we can also hear more from Capacity Zurich, which is an institution that deals with integrating refugees and migrants as entrepreneurs into the local context. So we'll hear more about that the topic during the panel. But first of all, let me introduce the panelists who are with us here today. So we have 4 panelists today. We have Mr. Ali Ercan Su, who is senior expert and the Directorate General of International Labor Force at the Ministry of Labor and Social Security in Turkey, and who will speak about the measures of the Turkish government and what works in that respect. We also have with us today Mr. Philippe Guichandou, who is the head of Inclusive Finance Development at Grameen Crédit Agricole Foundation, and will speak about how to best overcome the barriers to finance. We've heard that the barriers to finance, accessing loans, is a major challenge for refugee entrepreneurs. We then have Ms. Adrienne Gheorghi, who's a social policy expert and program manager in Capacity Zurich. And Adrienne will focus in particular on social inclusion and speak about her work also at Capacity Zurich and social inclusion of migrants and of refugees and entrepreneurs into the host country context. And then finally, we will hear also from Mr. Adel Karawi, who is CEO of K Consulting and a managing consulting and president of Abidea Association. And Adel works a lot with diaspora, the Tunisian diaspora, and entrepreneurs emerging from the Tunisian diaspora. And he will tell us more about his experience and how the diaspora manages to overcome some of the challenges and what are the policy and the support needs there. As I said earlier, you have the audience has a possibility to ask questions. So as the speakers speak, please prepare your questions and ask them proactively, and we'll get back to those questions after the panel, all the panelists have finished. So with this, on a quick note, over to Mr. Ali Ercan Su from the Ministry of Labor and Social Economy of Turkey. Ali, please go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. I will talk about briefly about the current situation regarding the refugee in Turkey, and secondly, what is happening in the field in terms of the projects, also especially this in terms of the Syrian enterprises, and thirdly, what worked best actually in terms of the policy choices. Regarding the refugees in Turkey, we have around 4 million refugees, and 3.7 million of them are Syrian origin, and the rest is Iraqis, Afghanis, and Iranians, in fact, mostly. And regarding the Syrians, working age population is around 2 million people. and 1.5 million is under the age of 15. And therefore, we have a huge working age population. We have also very big now informal employment in Turkey, especially from the Syrian side. And therefore, that is the situation. And coming to the field, yes, we are quite lucky in terms of the funds because of the EU. Now Turkey has been using around 6 billion euros, and most of the money goes to actually a social assistance scheme, in fact. But the rest of the money goes to employment projects, and I mean small amounts, let's say, of the money goes to employment projects, and most of them were, in fact, in the beginning, were designed to assist increasing the social skills, labor market skills of the refugees. But then we have started to implement entrepreneurship projects. Now in the field, around 10 projects supporting entrepreneurship, but most of them are just giving entrepreneurship trainings, and therefore it is not, it is just an early stage for us to assess the results of those projects. But we have just implemented 2 projects together with the UN institutions, IOM and ILO. Let's grow this business and opportunities for lives projects. And we have the first assessments we have are quite demonstrating that they are quite successful. Around 200 entrepreneurs were supported, and we have seen that several small businesses have been established, but also there are some projects, grants used for scaling up the businesses, and therefore we have seen that some of the grant scheme projects are quite successful, especially for scaling up the projects, scaling up the companies. And for example, IT company was established before in Turkey by a Syrian person, and now he expanded his enterprise. Now he's working more companies in Turkey. Also, we have seen that a geologist, academician, Syrian woman has established her geology company, and she works for now construction companies, and now she employs more than 10 people. And also we see some traditional jobs were supported, and it's quite successful. For example, especially in furniture sector, there were 2 or 3 projects were supported, and now, for example, they were just building manufacturing furnitures, but now they are also designing furniture, and also they are now exporting to Arabic countries. Also, we have seen another good example of wedding dresser company. A Syrian, very famous artist was he was a designer of wedding dresses, and now he's designing and manufacturing his wedding dresses, not only in Gaziantep region, but also in Istanbul and Ankara, in the main cities of Turkey. And therefore, we see quite different successful stories, traditional jobs as well as the modern jobs, let's say. Also, we have now enhancer project implemented by ICMP, the International Center for Migration Development Policies, has been doing a big project with 17 million grants scheme, and therefore we have to see the results of that project, in fact, because 70 million euro grant scheme is quite big money, and therefore I hope it's going to be very useful for the entrepreneurs to be supported in Turkey. And also I should mention the Gaziantep region, because Gaziantep region is very close to Syria, and it hosts more than 400,000 people, Syrian origin people in Turkey, in Gaziantep. and they have very good historical ties with Syria, because Gaziantep is a region of industry, and whatever they produce, manufactures, they export to Syria in general, but also Iraq and other Arabic countries. But we have seen that they have just established a very good website portal for the Syrian entrepreneurs. Actually, it is in Arabic, in Turkish, and in English, and it gives all the information requiring to establish a small business or scaling up the businesses, as well as accessing to the services and financial incentives. And therefore, it's good and without any funds, actually. It's very good, successful story, let's say. And what else about the Syrian entrepreneurship in Turkey? Yeah, we have seen that there has been lots of Syrian enterprises in Turkey. Mr. Rao told that around 9,000, but it is actually it's around 15,000 now registered Syrian entrepreneurs in Turkey, and most of them are in the southeast Anatolia, very close to the Syrian border. And it is estimated that they employ 250,000 people, and it's quite a lot. And they are also exporting to, as it is told before, to Diaspora. Yeah, I mean, they sell to their products to mostly Syria, but also Iraq, Morocco, Algeria, and those countries. And therefore, they are quite successful. And they have also established an association in Turkey, Syrian Entrepreneur Association, and they have their own branches in Mersin and Istanbul, as well as their main branch in Gaziantep. And then what worked best? It is quite difficult, but let's say several after the examples. First of all, the funds should be available. And we, as I told you, we were quite lucky because there was an EU money allocated for the Syrian people, and therefore we have been just using that. And second, surely access to funds for the refugees is quite important. Yeah, there is no need to mention that actually, because it is already known fact. But thirdly, I think there should be a non-discriminatory legislation to benefit from services and financial assistance of the governmental institutions. And in Turkey, if you establish a small business or SME, you can benefit from any kind of services and financial assistance. Therefore, it helps a lot for the refugees. But it is clear that language skills are quite important, and most of the refugees do not have the language skills, and therefore they cannot benefit properly from those services. And the fourth one is having a profession. From the projects, we have seen that if you have the profession, it is easier to establish a business, and therefore profession is quite important regarding the establishment of small business or scaling up the enterprise. The last one is the mentoring. From the projects also, we have learned that most of the successful stories are just mentioning about the guidance of the mentoring. Because as you know, mentors prepare business plans, search for the markets, including the export markets, and therefore they are quite useful, as well as they advise, on human resources and technologies for the companies. And therefore, mentoring is quite important. But there are also obstacles. Maybe I can give later those issues, but I can say that we have to be very careful about the success of the migrant entrepreneurs, because they are coming from traumatized background, and therefore all of them cannot be successful, and therefore we have to give a chance. And if they fail, we should support them by programs, social programs, and therefore they have to be they have to feel that they are included in society. They have to be not to be disappointed. That's all what I will say, actually.
Great, thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll have questions that we can discuss later on. We have now move on to the next panel, and Turkey's case is particular and very interesting because the density of refugees in some of the region is very, very high. So you're facing the challenge times 10 compared to many other countries as well, and particularly in some specific regions. So that's why it was very interesting to hear from your best practice and from some of the bottom-up initiatives as well that just appear because people want to contribute and want to improve their own situation and their situation in the host country as well. Thank you for that. I'm sure we'll come back to some of those points. Now, with this, access to finance was one of the things that you mentioned. We'll hear more from Philippe Quichondou, who is the head of inclusive finance development at Grameen Crédit Agricole. Philippe, over to you. 5 minutes max. We can come back to questions afterwards and have some of the keep some of the interesting facts for the discussion afterwards as well. So 5 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Margareta, and thank you also for the 7th World Investment Forum to invite me. Very rapidly, to let you know who is the foundation Grameen Crédit Agricole. It was set up in 2018 by the Groupe Crédit Agricole, which is one of the largest French bank, but also in the world, cooperative bank, and the Grameen Trust from Bangladesh with the Professor Mohamed Yunus. They received the Peace Nobel Prize in 2006. So the two organizations decided to promote microfinance, and we are basically an investors in the sectors because we invest in form of debt guarantee or equity to microfinance institutions and social business enterprises. Currently, we are supporting more than 80 partners worldwide, mainly with strong focus on Africa. And we are mainly managing a portfolio of 100 million euros. We've been we have a very strong social mission, and the Professor Mohamed Yunus is someone that has put social as the core of its objective. So from the beginning, we thought that it was very important to serve also and to work with people that had no access to financial services. And that's mainly the case for, as it was suggested, from the refugees. The main reason why is that first, there is usually no operators, no institutions working there. And why? Because the main reason is that they perceive these people as much riskier than their normal clients. And why they perceive that they are much riskier? Because they always have this belief that people will leave after 1 year or 2 years. You share the figures that is not the case. I mean, you say that and it's usually, unfortunately, people stay there for 10, 18 years and so on. But this flight risk is still something which is very strongly in the mind of the institutions. So they believe that the risk is much higher. They even believe that they don't have business activities, that they are not that much entrepreneurs, that they depend on dole-outs, on grants from different organizations, from different NGOs, and so that they are not this capacity to develop such a type of activities. And that's something which is not true. So that's why we've been extremely pleased to have this partnership with the UNHCR and the SIDA, the Swedish International Development Agency, whereas we do provide, the foundation, we do provide debt to microfinance institutions so that they can provide themselves debt to their clients. And we help them to set up projects and to set up branches in refugee settlement. We've started this program right now in Uganda. We are working with 3 MFIs partners, BRAC Bank, the Yug Effort, which is a local microfinance institution, and Vision Fund International. They are part of the World Vision group that I guess most of you know, because I know they work a lot with UNHCR as well. And so these 3 organizations, they have been, thanks to this project, they've been able to go and to start to understand that these people are not as risky. We did some studies in Uganda. We did also some study in Jordan because we were planning to set up a program, similar program in Jordan. This has been delayed for a while. So far, the results have been extremely positive. We've been able to serve more than 23,000 refugees. We've been able to lend more than 1.8 million, almost $2 million to these people. They are real business case. I mean, you really have people that are doing very good business. Maybe not as big as Mr. Innocent, because we talk really about micro businesses. You know, it's usually small women selling goods in the market, or it's hairdressers. So it's usually people that have just 1 or 2 staff, the maximum. But the repayment rate has been very good. I mean, before the COVID crisis, they had 100% repayment rate. The COVID crisis especially hit a lot Uganda, because they had a lot of lockdown, and still one of the countries where the impact is quite strong. So it's true that now the repayment rate is a little bit lower, but we see that it's keep increasing once the opportunity have been open. So really what we can prove and what we say now to other microfinance organizations is that to serve this type of clientele has to be served like you do it with the normal people. We not only focus, and it was one point that was raised, which is very important, we do not only focus on refugees, but we also work with the host communities, because we believe it's very important that, I mean, it's a global approach. So we serve both host communities and refugees. And it's maybe a last point is to say that one part of the success has been that we've been in this program hiring loan officers being refugees. So they know how to speak the language. The issues of the language was raised by Mr. Ali Hakan, which is a key issue when you deal with, of course, refugees from different, in Uganda, I mean, they speak French, for example, from RDC, or they could speak French from Rwanda before. So it's a key issue. And then you do have people that knows about the cultures, they know about it, and they stay in the camp. And it was very interesting to see that during the COVID crisis, I mean, the repayment rate in the camps in Uganda with the refugee were better than for the global population. One of the main reasons is that because the staff was there, they were living there, and they knew the people. So, so for all, I would say so good. And I really hope that this pilot project, and you were mentioning the ideas about partnership, I think it's very important. I mean, the Swedish International Development Agency is really supporting us to provide grants. We do provide also non-financial services for the refugees to help them to understand how to manage the budget, how to do their activities. And of course, the UNHCR is key in making the link with authorities, making the links with the different NGOs working in the settlements. And by putting everybody together around the table to tackle the issues, I think that we can be quite optimistic for the futures. I will stop here because I just have 5 minutes. And of course, I hope I will be able to answer other questions, or yes, that's for sure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Philippe. And I think it's, you know, the 2 points of takeaway from me is the risks are lower than with what you said, normal people, and which is a very important point. And there's a really strong business case for this, and also the importance, of course, to working with host countries and working with partnerships have not gone unnoticed from what you said. I hope there will be questions, and we have the opportunity to come back to some of your practices here after the panel of speakers have spoken. Now over to, we'll take a look at the social side of integration. And you know, I'm living in Switzerland. I'm based here as well, and so is Adrienne. She's in Zurich, and look forward to hearing from her how the Capacity Zurich program has been working, and has been, you know, what the challenging that you've been facing, and what are some of the key takeaways and key lessons learned there.
Thank you very much. So I'm Adrienne Dury from Capacity Zurich, and just a very brief introduction to what we work and what we do at Capacity. So our organization is a talent and startup incubator for people with refugee and migrant background. And I stress the "and" because the people we are working with are choosing entrepreneurship out of necessity. They are becoming entrepreneurs out of necessity because of the fact that most of them are really high skilled and come with a lot of experiences to Switzerland, but simply they face a lot of hurdles to integrate into the labor market. And in order to find ways how they can use their talent and all the skills and all the experiences, they are considering entrepreneurship to make it work. And I think from this regard, it's especially important at Capacity that we do not only, in our programs, we do not only do business development, focus on business development, but on human development as well. And we were asked to share some of the challenges refugees specifically face. So we all know, coming from the policy and professional side, that there is a high level uncertainty, especially for refugees. And this uncertainty goes beyond acquiring the legal recognition of their refugee status. Of course, that's already a lengthy process to acquire, but also after that, and in that respect, this uncertainty and vulnerability goes to the financial situation, to the labor market, but also to the local community and to the society. Because the society, what we see is reinforces this uncertainty because of the lack of awareness of their situation, the lack of, for example, even if they are eligible to take a job, of course, in many cases, we see that employers, as Philip mentioned also, that they perceive them more as a risk and not really hiring. And these uncertainties, of course, pertain also with the entrepreneurship, because it takes a lot of time, a lot of efforts to build a business. And what needs more, where we see the need is to manage expectations from the society as well, that from the refugees and from the migrant community, business development is usually not the traditional linear way of developing a business, but really jumping into it and having a limited time to develop all the ideas and so forth. And also we see that there are a lot of self-confidence issues because they face a lot of rejections in the labor market, what I mentioned. And that's where we see that the community support, that they are not alone in their entrepreneurial journeys, even though they are solopreneurs, vast majority of them do not have partners to run their businesses or nonprofit initiatives. So it is especially about the community feeling of it, to support each other, to acknowledge each other's skills and talent. And the third challenge, what I would stress, is the lack of local professional network. And there is the mentorship program part of it, what is especially important. And at Capacity, we use, so to say, a corporate volunteering model. So we have all our mentors and coaches coming from our corporate partners. And we encourage all our mentors and coaches to open up new opportunities to our entrepreneurs. And this is how they can get direct access to new opportunities, to also to increase their visibility. And yes, we are with the finances. We also see the issues. Of course, there is lack of finances. We support them with techniques in fundraising, but of course we would very much appreciate to develop further our programs in terms of seed funding, providing seed funding to our entrepreneurs. And here also the corporate volunteer model helps a lot, because those mentors and coaches who get to know the stories of these entrepreneurs, their resilience and their aim to build a business, or their aim to build a nonprofit initiative, can help a lot to spread the word and to mobilize the local communities to support them and yes, to make it happen. So of course, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer, but I know that we are short of time, so probably I will stop here and we can go into the details later on.
Thank you very much. The joys of working from home. This is my dog barking here, so apologies for that. But on that note, we have one more speaker to go. Mr. Abdelkaroui, talking about the experience of the Tunisian diaspora, because the diaspora is, of course, a very, very important element of this equation. So could you tell us more about the work of your association, and what are some of the challenges faced and some of the positive experience that you have seen in your work with the Tunisian diaspora, please? And again, 5 minutes, please, so that we can get some questions into the discussions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Margareta. My personal professional experience is long and varied, and I tried to transmit it through an associative reality that I had given life some years ago with a group of professionals, entrepreneurs, and academics, Italian and Tunisian. Al Bidaya is an association of women and men with an integrated vision of the world, who consider exchange as an irreplaceable element of openness, integration, pacification among peoples, and an extraordinary factor of culture, social, and economic growth. Connecting, circulating, and exchanging ideas, people, and structures as freely as possible is a difficult task, but it is the only real possibility to make the various parts of the world converse, so as to induce them to consider the other part not as antagonist or as a term of conquest. Promoting and speeding up this process in this ultimate goal with which our association is born and operates. We provide assistance, information, and advice to members in any matter relating to the association, related to their interests and activities, and create opportunities for the social, culture, and financial and economic activities of the Mediterranean area to develop mutually enhancing national and regional specificities. Develop bilateral relations, multilateral relations, and socio-cultural, economic, financial, and commercial collaborations at all levels and in all areas, between Tunisia and Italy, and between the geographic core areas of reference. Consolidate and develop international cooperation and investment from and to Tunisia, the Maghreb, and the whole Mediterranean area. The association aims to achieve these goals through the implementation of various activities, including conference, debates, seminars, concerts, various type of courses, study and searching, mentoring, and all of this. Nevertheless, a large number of diaspora associations intend to foster expatriate community ties, as well as collectively helping the country of origin. We have taken up the challenges and difficulties linked to the world of entrepreneurship of foreign origin, and more precisely the Maghreb, by researching entrepreneurs in which regions and what types of investments they make. So we began to organize economic forums inviting both foreign entrepreneurs in Italy and Italian entrepreneurs to make known the investment opportunities. In this case, we began with Tunisia as a pilot project for direct investment. We are also, I have time, yeah? I have more time, yeah?
2 minutes, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. We are also aware that Tunisian diaspora members also serve as a bridge for foreigners who wish to do business in Tunisia, and the role they play in the development of particular industries in their country of origin, with or without the help of the government. The issues, for the most important issues to address regarding the possibility of investing by members of the diaspora in the country origin is the bureaucracy, lack of confidence on the system, lack of clear and reliable information, difficulty in obtaining credit. This is why the first project in Italy dedicated to the mobilization of the Tunisian diaspora has arrived and helped them better understanding how to invest in their country of origin. IOM, with which I am consultant, has been implementing since 2017 a project entitled Migration as a Resource, Mobilization of Tunisian Diaspora, and Stabilization of Disadvantaged Communities in Tunisia. This project is funded by the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation through the Agency for Development Cooperation, and in close collaboration with Tunisian authorities at national and regional level, civil society and private sector in Italy and Tunisia, for the implementation of this project, which aims, among other things, at the optimization of diaspora investment policies and its contribution to the development of the national economy, and is in harmony with the process of achieving the sustainability development goals. Therefore, this project aims to contribute to the economic development of the northwest and southeast regions of Tunisia through the mobilization and engagement of the Tunisian diaspora abroad, more particularly those living in Italy. And finally, the project intends to create project by promote investment and job creation supported and added to by the Tunisian diaspora abroad. This program is implemented by IOM, which identifies the economic activities with high added value, selected the beneficiary and investors, set up of parity financing, and finally implements support action at different phases of the project by facilitating the linking between the Tunisian diaspora and the beneficiary entrepreneur in Tunisia. IOM hopes to encourage to exchange of experience and knowledge between the Tunisian resident abroad and the project holder. So far, 34 Tunisians residing in Italy are engaged in investment project with young entrepreneurs in 12 regions in Tunisia. In addition, these investments are mainly transfers of financial capital with a value exceed 400,000 euro. IOM is also support 20 other projects with post-COVID assistance in the form of a mini grant of stability of their businesses and their maintenance of jobs. We have the other programs like this will arrive in the future to help young entrepreneurs to invest. Thank you, and sorry for to exceed the time.
No, thank you, Adel. Interesting. This, this idea of that the diaspora is funding also entrepreneurship, is supporting entrepreneurship back home among young people. So there's, this reverse linkage also that we haven't spoken about yet, which I retained from your contribution, which is really interesting.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you all for your contributions. Very interesting, and it really sheds light on how diverse this topic is and how many aspects and facets there are to it, and how important it is to have the right policies and the right environment in place for the countries to benefit. There's a huge potential to benefiting from refugee and migrant entrepreneurship, which is very clear. We have a few questions. We have a couple of questions for Innocent at this point in time. I would encourage the audience also to use the Q&A and please ask additional questions. But let me just maybe kick off with a couple of questions for Innocent that we had. So please keep it short, Innocent, to the degree possible. The first one is about whether the government of Kenya has supported refugee entrepreneurs with subsidies or other fiscal incentives. Was this the case in Kenya? You're on mute, please.
Okay, thanks very much for this question. In fact, the government of Kenya is assisting the entrepreneur so much. Number one, it is about giving the movement pass, even if it takes a long time. Number two, if you wanted to start your business, you go to LAS, which is camp manager. They give you the land for free. You will not pay. He asked also about the taxes. For sure, for refugee, there is no tax holiday. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And the other question is also for you, and slightly different. There is a question about the role of technology, which I thought we haven't discussed yet. There was some mention about portals, digital portals in Turkey. Do you see any use, for example, for blockchain-enabled digital IDs for migrants or refugees? Could this facilitate some of the administrative steps that migrants and refugees have to take when establishing a company?
Okay, in fact, IDs are very okay, especially in this issue of blockchain, but the problem we have, it is the internet. And I would request, if possible, just to have, to invite the private sector to see on that, just to test if it can work. But for me, for sure, it can work. And I would request just to go directly to the beneficiary, to the refugee entrepreneur, to work directly to them, because from there they will get the quality feedback than to pass to any other agencies to work on behalf of the refugee entrepreneurs. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Nassim. That's very interesting. Can we, continue maybe on this role of public-private collaboration? And I would like to ask Philippe is whether, what was, I think you are clearly, on the private sector side here in this, on the panel. What is your take? What are the main barriers to public-private collaboration in this context? What have you experienced, and how did you manage to overcome those? I'm sure there were many and numerous.
Not so many, to be positive, in the sense that I think there was a strong willingness from all the parties, at least, to really to go into that process. The process was long, to be frank. I mean, it took us more time than what we expected. More time for example, SIDA, the Swedish International Development Agency, to understand how it works, what we can do as an impact investors, what are our own limitations and so on. So I think it was more a question of cultural adaptation to understand where things can work, where things cannot work that well. But I found that so far with all the partners involved, there's been lots of understanding, openness. It's true that the COVID made things change, delayed in the project, but there was open discussion at that level. And we don't deal directly with all these issues with government locally in Uganda. I mean, the relationship with the Office of the Prime Minister is really managed by the UNHCR. But I know that they have done a lot of work there, because there's clearly a strong willingness that from their government side that we have financial inclusion for refugees. So I think that when the willingness is there, still, of course, there are barriers, there's issues. For example, we had one issues with SIM cards for the refugees, and to be able to pay through mobile money. I mean, we talk about mobile money. It seemed that was a problem because the ID that were used were not always accepted by the companies and so on. Then we got the support from the UNHCR, we got the support from the government. It took time. It takes always more time than what you expect, because you want things to go a little bit faster. But at the end, I mean, the barrier was overcome. So I think that if there is a strong willingness to go into that, at the end, it's pretty works. Of course, there are still issues of how the entrepreneurs can, I mean, for example, in terms of financial literacy, understanding the type of businesses, there's a need to really strengthen financial literacy, to strengthen non-financial services. But you have people on the ground. It takes always a little bit more time than what you would expect. But at the end, no, it has been so far so good. I'm crossing my fingers.
Great, thank you for that. If we can continue a little bit on that question, I would love to hear from also the public sector. What this looks like from the public sector perspective. Whether there is, and Ali, I know you're not really the public sector, but you're working with the Ministry of Labor in Turkey, and there is, of course, a very strong private sector in Turkey as well. How did this? Did you see this collaboration work out well? Were there barriers? What would you do to improve, to reduce those barriers to partnerships more broadly?
As Philip said, yes, there is a willingness, and public sector is working very closely to private sector, in fact, in Turkey. And if we look at the development plans, strategies, action plans on entrepreneurship, we see that there is very, very big willingness to cooperate with the private sector, but surely there are some obstacles. In fact, I am not from the SME Association, governmental institution, but because we are working with them, and what I know from that institution is that the procedures can be very tough for the entrepreneurs, and therefore it's not easy. And in case of the migrant refugee entrepreneurs, it's much more difficult, because there are certain rules that they should obey, I mean, in terms of the government institution, and therefore every time it is always a complaint about the cooperation, lack of cooperation between the governmental association and the entrepreneurs in the field. That's the whole thing that I know, in fact, and that's all that I can say.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And I think it is you know, it's a cultural change. I think that some of it is certainly a learning curve. There's a learning curve associated with this type of initiatives as well. Before we have 8 minutes left, I would love to also go back to Adrienne also on this, on a similar topic, which is, what do you see, you know, for as the key challenges for the next years? You know, I think that the need for integration and the need for providing opportunities for entrepreneurship for refugees and migrants is certainly increasing. What do you see as the key challenges for the next years that you would like to see resolved at the end?
Yes, so I think when talking about the social inclusion part of refugee and migrant entrepreneurs, I think what needs to be acknowledged, that it's not only the entrepreneurs, they need also local community and the societies to support them, because of course they need clients, they need partners, they need the institutions to support them, because this is, even if they are doing their business on their own, still the support needs to be there. So what we would love to see is, and we are working on it, is to challenge the mainstream discourse on migration and the refugee issues, to show their resilience, to show their contributions, because as previous panelists and also the keynote speakers, they mentioned how much contribution there is in refugee and migrant entrepreneurship. People need to know about this. They need to embrace this, because this is how it can really achieve these kind of benefits. Yes.
Yeah, of course. So, and as you mentioned, some of the speakers have mentioned it. I think Philippe's examples of you know, just simply the business case is a very strong one, both from a financial perspective, from a loan perspective, financial sector perspective, as well as for a broader societal perspective as well. Great, thank you. I think this is a really important part. Adel, you are in a slightly different position here with respect to, you know, the host country's situation. But do you see, you know, and because I think also working especially with the diaspora, you set up is slightly different, right? It's not the same case as a refugee who is really new to the host country. You're working with much more stable structures. Diaspora usually lives in the country for longer periods of time. But do you face this type of issues as well, that there is a lack of receptiveness on the host country side to people who are living even over the longer term, and there's a lack of recognition as well of the benefits of entrepreneurship from migrants and from the diaspora communities?
Yes, thank you, Margareta. Yes, the diaspora is very different, and when we work with the diaspora, diaspora is very important. Then they have to know that their country of origin is important. It's very important to invest and let's better their life here in the country of residence also. If they have the situation and better situation here in their country of residence, they can think to invest in their country of origins. I am in the tourism sector and I am consultant, and the best way to integrate some people and the diaspora, in this case, support students to help them to have a good life in the country of residence, and after they can go back to invest in their country. And we try to employ them in the hotels or restaurant like this. They can integrate more easy and have a life more easy also. Then also we work with private and institutions like consulate or embassy, Tunisian embassy, to let the people have a confidence, more confidence in invest in their country. But that's the problem. The problem that they have no more after the Arab Springs. They have not more confidence of that, then we are working like IOM do also. We are working to do this.
Great, thank you very much. We're coming to the end of the session, and before we need to end at 2 o'clock sharp. So with this, I'll hand back actually to our host of today, to Mr. Richard Baldwin from UNCTAD. He is the head of the enterprise branch at the Division of Investment on Enterprise. So it's the part of UNCTAD that organizes the conference today. And I'll invite him for his closing remarks. And thank you all. Thank you to the panelists and thank you to the audience for actively participating already from my side before we fully close the session. So Richard, over to you.
Thank you very much, Margaretha. I'll be very brief, just a few words. It's been an extremely interesting debate. I really appreciate the contribution of all of the speakers. What I particularly liked was hearing lots of practical experiences, and examples of practical experiences, exactly the logic that we have also used in the policy guide for entrepreneurship for migrants and refugees. Well, you heard the speakers in the beginning of this session about the work we have done on this policy guide with IOM and UNHCR. So I will not go into that further, but it is based on a collection of very practical experiences in the field of promoting entrepreneurship for migrants and refugees. Of course, our work on this together with IOM and UNHCR is ongoing and will continue. For example, right at this moment, we're doing technical assistance work in Uganda and Ecuador on the policy framework for promoting entrepreneurship among migrants and refugees. We're also doing actual training work with migrants and refugees in the same countries and also in Jordan through the use of our Empertech network, which is a network of centers providing training on entrepreneurship. So we're doing practical work to bring out this thinking on how to promote entrepreneurship for migrants and refugees. So I will just conclude thanking again our long-standing partners, IOM and UNHCR, for this continuation of a positive collaboration between our organizations. Very much appreciate that. Thank you also very much to all of the speakers today. Really appreciate your contribution. It's been extremely interesting. And last but not least, Margaretha, thank you for very capable leading of this discussion today. And I will just conclude by saying, please do walk through our conference center. We have more than 90 other events this week as part of the World Investment Forum. And I look forward to seeing some or all of you at any of these other sessions this week. Thank you very much.